How's it going? Okay, so I have my phone just because there's questions. I promise I'm not texting. We have this, but anyway. So this is going to be a panel on education skills of the 21st century: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. We all are different leaders in our various places, and I'll let us introduce ourselves, but I want this to be open, so if there's something we say and one of you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, and we're happy to pause to get that answered for you. So if you guys want to just all introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Dr. Natasha Half-Kenny. I am an administrator of the Boston Public School System. I am also the CEO and president of Melanin Scholars, LLC, and Melanin Scholars con una Voz, Incorporated. Thank you.
I'm Priya Kartik. I'm the founder of Inspire Academy, where we do communication and leadership coaching for youth, adults, and organizations. So we run several programs for schools and universities. So that is what I do and I'm passionate about.
Hello everyone, my name is Joel. I'm the founder of an organization called Empower, where we provide success education coaching for students all over the country.
Hi, Dr. Sonia Toledo. I am the founder and CEO of Dignity of Children.
Awesome. So we're going to start with Dr. Natasha, and the first question that we have is, how do you communicate and collaborate vision for our most marginalized populations?
I think when you're thinking about vision, just as a school leader right now, when I think about vision, I think about the amount of students that we need to help and support. And thinking about how we do that, even in Boston, when we look at formative assessments, we're looking at, based on the data, 70% of our students will succeed at blank, fill in the blank. But what we're not thinking about is the 30% that we're leaving behind. And so when I'm communicating and collaborating about vision, I'm thinking about 100% of the students that we are not failing. And so that means digging into biases, that means digging into anti-racist education, that means equitable learning for all. And knowing that difference between equity and equality is really important. Equity being giving each child exactly what they need.
Thank you. I love that. And I think it was really important from what we just heard about equity as well and kind of zip code. So it kind of falls right into what we just heard. And so, let me get my phone here. All right. Priya, I'm saying it right. Okay, I was getting nervous. Sorry, I messed up. I was like, okay, so the question for you is, what are the biggest problems that we have today in terms of communication, and how can we fix it?
Yes, one thing that all of us need to address is communication. I'm not going to give a very long explanation in here. I'm going to address two major issues. Communication is a two-way street. It's just not about me speaking. Right now, it is a two-way street. Even though all of you are silent right now, you're listening, and that is part of communication. And the moment we communicate, whether irrespective of the age, whether it is a bunch of middle school or high school students or in the corporate world, there is the person who's speaking and the person who's listening needs to be in sync. And the biggest problem here is our attention span. In 2000, the attention span of human beings was 12 to 15 seconds. In 15 years now, 2015, it came to 8 seconds. Lesser than goldfish. Goldfish attention span is 9 seconds. I tagged the goldfish. I'm ready to talk to goldfish. And right now, post-COVID, the threat, can you guess what the number is? I wish. 3 seconds. I'll tell you, if you do not believe me, you do it to yourself. You do this experiment, open Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you measure the speed with which your hand is moving up. Your hands were moving slower 2 years back. Right now, it's moving at, this is the speed. And when I need to draw that attention, I have less than 3 seconds time, and in that I need to communicate my idea, and again I have another 3 seconds. The moment we realize that we have 3 seconds to communicate our idea, then we are a lot more prepared to communicate. So that is problem number 1. Problem number 2, related to the other one, is brevity. We call it the clarity, or how precise I am communicating. Again, it is leading to the fact that I have 3 seconds for me to communicate. Now already have lost me right now. You're thinking about your own problems, right? You're not there with me now. I know that. But in spite of that, why am I doing this is drawing you back so that you're paying attention. So the moment we know that the attention span is less, then the person who's communicating is a lot more prepared to make it precise and clear so that the communication is effective.
I love that. And then, not to skip you over, Joel, I'm just going to ask the same question to Dr. Sonia, but we'll come right back to you. So the question is, Dr. Sonia, what are the biggest problems that we have today in terms of communication, and how can we fix it?
Ooh, start listening. I'm going to make it simple. Part of it, and picking back off of what you just said, we don't listen. We prepare to talk. And I'm saying we as a society, we are just so much into, I want to be heard, because of the, we were missed out. I grew up in a generation of you're seen, not heard. So what I would say is, especially in our school systems and our teachers and people who are directly working with young people or even with each other, is practice listening. Because if I'm listening, I will get back to listening. If I know I'm listening, those 3 seconds happen and I go, oh, back to listening. And if I'm trying to figure out how to respond to you, I don't care about what you say. I only care about what I'm going to say to you. So our biggest problem is that we don't listen. And if we listen more to our young people, we would not have the problems we have with mental illness as we have today.
I love that. And there's actually a great book I read. It's called Just Listen. I don't know the author, but if any of you read a lot, it's a great book. Just jot it down.
It's a wonderful book.
Yeah.
It's worth reading.
Yeah.
So I was just saying, listening is a skill, right? When you think about it, like hearing, many of us have been born with hearing, but actually listening to process instead of listening to reply is definitely a skill.
And then Joel, our guy, our anchor here, thank you. So your question is, what are your thoughts on the challenges urban youth face in education today, and how can we think about improving upon these challenges?
So I'm actually from the Bronx as well. And so I would say when it comes to the urban youth, let's say population, I think, let's say for example, when I was growing up, I was exposed to a lot of gang violence. A lot of my friends that I went to, let's say, middle school with ended up either dropping out or going to jail or a whole bunch of bad things, right? So I think, I would say apart from the whole community aspect of improving the overall community, which is a large, task in itself, I would say within our schools, especially let's say in the post-COVID environment, I would say, I think attention is a big factor. And maybe finding innovative ways such as using TikTok, right? I think a lot of people nowadays are learning things that they never learned through TikTok. I find myself learning new things all the time, like just scrolling, which is weird, but
It's true.
Yeah, I would say finding new ways to leverage technology and I think this whole trend of social emotional learning is also a really positive thing because people are experiencing a lot of trauma, and when you have dealing with all this trauma, it's hard to focus and learn new things. So I think those are my thoughts.
And I love that you said that. Kind of goes to with the last speaker. I feel like whoever organized this conference did this on purpose. But when we were talking about trauma learning and also those who didn't have that, so I think it's very important what you shared. Okay, then the question I had for myself, or we had, and I'm going to ask is, how are communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity interrelated? So I think this is so important, especially when I'm looking at my dissertation that I'm doing now. A lot of us in this room, right, we're functioning under a paradigm of cognitive learning theory. A lot of you, well, not all, I don't want to age date everyone, but some people here, it was behavioral learning theory. So you were input something, they expected you to do a behavior. My generation was more, okay, how do we input something, what changes in there, and then how do we output it, right? And something I dropped yesterday, which is connectivism learning theory. It's a newer theory, 2006, that's come through, and it's about networking. And so I think what's really important is communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. They're all really connected to you feeling safe to just be who you are, be authentic in the rooms that you're in, and be authentic in your work meetings. You know, I know when I worked in corporate, I was always the girl that was like, I'm so scared, I don't want to be here, like I'm so different, you know? But I think it's really learning like how to just be you, whoever you are, and that will always attract the right people you're here to lead and teach. And your creativity comes from your expression, right? So the more that you can be okay with you, you naturally will communicate, you'll naturally build a better team, you'll naturally build a more trusting team, transparency, and that builds collaboration and trust, because new ideas come. You're good at this, I'm good at this, now we can just figure it out. And the critical thinking just, it's not so much of how do we input to reframe the pathway in the brain to get a result, it's, okay, what do they actually want to critically think about? And then we can cultivate an environment for that.
True, it is absolutely interrelated in the fact that, well said, I think you connected it very, very well. To make it a little more precise, let us take that, all of us right now, educators, in school and colleges, we talk about critical thinking a lot. Okay, we are all preparing our students for critical thinking, so it is already doing a great job. So we have all the methodologies and pedagogies that goes towards building critical thinking. That is one side of the brain. But the other side of the brain is the creativity. They don't have any connection at all. And the other side, the best way to bring in those two together is through communication and collaboration. Communication needs critical thinking and creativity. So it kind of merges both. And the moment I know how to use that communication, I naturally become a better collaborator, okay? And so I use my creativity, critical thinking, I use my communication to link this. And naturally I become, so everything becomes one. The moment I put one, all of us are striving for one thing. Right now, sitting here, you're all here because you want to make connections, relationships. The moment we put all these three things together, link it, then we make connections. And once each and every student, every child, every adult knows to make that connection, then the world is going to be a better place.
Totally.
Exactly.
And I love that you said that too, because there's another book by Sungay, it's called The Fifth Discipline, and it's a very advanced way of thinking about organizations. And one thing that book said is that we connect and transform through dialogue. It's actually not conversation, it's dialogue. If you look up the Latin meaning of dialogue, it's like to actually form a interconnected, like listening back and forth, where conversation is more like someone's talking at you and listening. So I love that you said that. And so Joel, we're gonna start with you for the second one. Now you're going first. So what do you think higher education institutions can begin doing in order to be more effectively compete with online certification programs and tech boot camps?
Yeah, I think I would say in relation to the topic that we're talking about in regards to communication, I would say that I think higher education institutions need to do a good job at, I would say, making sure that they're maybe even shortening up the time frames of how long it takes to get a degree. I've seen a lot of organizations come out recently that are giving accelerated associates programs where you get like on many associates through, let's say, a Coursera program and things like that. So I would say focusing on that. But even apart from that, I think social emotional learning is going to be good all around. I think not only through the K-12, because obviously college students are facing with this, similar issues in regards to, I would say, this COVID trauma that we've all experienced recently.
Yeah, and I love what you said, because there's definitely such an increase in MOOCs, which is massive open online courses, where we can go on, and I know I have a lot of courses on these sites myself that people can go on and get free, and you do it. So I think it's really important when we're looking at this world of 21st century and communication and collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. Like, these are four huge pillars that really each of them can be their own dialogue. But I like what you're saying is how is we, the institution, can leverage pathways on those different, so a student feels like they have options and empowered in their education.
especially, not only in the higher education, starting off, starting from kindergarten to 12th grade, K to 12, there are a lot of ways through which we can interlink this and weave it into the curriculum. All of you are right now curriculum designers and educators who can bring all these three things together, weave it into the curriculum, then we are a lot more prepared for the future.
Yes. Okay, so now we're going to go back to Dr. Natasha. So, how do you ensure equitable learning?
I've been doing a lot of studying with Goldie Muhammad's book. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but The Cultivating Genius. And she talks about 5 pillars of learning. One being identity, skills, intellect, criticality, and joy. And I think the two that really weave everything together for equitable learning is really criticality, where we are teaching students how to read, to write, to think actively for themselves, and identity. Because I think once you know who you are able to move forward. Once you are comfortable in your skin and the people who are in front of you and are teaching you have a relationship with you, then you feel free enough to move forward in your learning. And I think with those two things, if you keep those two things in mind as you move forward in teaching and learning, or even leading a school or a district, you are bound to get success out of your students.
I was going to say, Dr. Sonia, that was the question. You're next. I have the same question. I feel like these are questions for you.
Equity doesn't mean that we get the same thing. You give me what I give you and what I give you. We have it all wrong. Equity is what I need personally. So I'm going to go back to the individualized instruction, and we could only cultivate an organic classroom when we have, like you said, Dr. Natasha, an opportunity to identify my identity. Like, what are my talents? Where do I exceed at? What am I good at? Believe it or not, I was not good at speaking because with my language, and of course learning disability because I was diagnosed, I would mispronounce words. But the more I practice in real life experience, the better I got in language. The more I practice with others, the more I got in knowing what my skill is versus what your skill is. So equity in education is not giving the same thing to everyone. Equity in education is giving me what I need for me to thrive and be at the same capacity that everyone else is.
I love that. And I actually want to ask this to the audience just to get a little bit of engagement with you guys. So who here would say in the audience, like you feel like you had to change your identity to be sitting here today? Yeah. Or no, you guys all felt like you were born this way? You're yeah, we got a room, okay. Yeah, I was like, okay, well, I'm happy you guys were all that way. That wasn't for me. Yeah, raise your hands if you felt like you've had to change your identity throughout your life.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. I was like, no one in the whole room. I was like, okay. But I think it's really important because I don't think we give ourselves even enough credit as our own people of how much we've had to adapt our identity and shift our identity. And if we don't look at our life when we've made major transitional points, and that could even be, changing the type of style you're wearing, changing, like anything. And I think for each of us here, that's a big thing of what we're saying. It's just, what is the way that you can offer someone to see that they can shift their identity in learning, and that massively changes things.
Yeah.
And we
Showing yourself is, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, when talking about identity, and all of you raised your hands, the one thing that I was talking over lunch, where whenever we want to make a connection or whether we want to make an impact, the number one requirement is authenticity. And that authenticity comes only when we are brave enough to showcase who we are. And as educators, if we are able to encourage that authenticity in a classroom, then we are building better community for the future.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I think this is why, I created my program specifically, and I branded it as Success Education because I like Earl Nightingale's definition of success, the progressive realization towards a worthy goal, right? And I think self-image is dramatically important for everybody, right? And so getting students to contemplate, okay, what do I want to become? What's the self-image I want to design for myself, right? I think that specific conversation is really lacking in our education system, because I feel like that provides a strong foundation for students to rise out of the concrete, right, and turn into that rose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
No,
Oh,
no,
sorry.
no.
I was gonna say, one thing I think too, I like what you said, but it's something that we've definitely done in my company that's definitely really changed. And you know, when you look at social media, and I think, right, like I have a very kind of specific branding, and so when I post something on Instagram, it has to go through a certain editing process to even be posted, so it fits the filter. I mean, in a nice way, but like a filtering one, so it's a cohesive. There's certain pictures that we take that we can't post. There's people that I make that I want to post, and I'm like, wait, I have to wait like 3 days, and this sounds so. It sounds so cliche, but what you said, like that communication, it's like you will be able to look at my content on the internet. You can look at whatever, and no one can copy it. You couldn't. You can't like take it off the runway. Basically, like this is me because your voice is so you, and I think that's what's really important in whatever you teach or embody. It's like you want to create this branding around you or your organization or your body of work you believe in, and like make sure that that's what people are always feeling. So even if you weren't in the room, people would still know that it's you.
Sorry, I think one of the most powerful things that we're seeing today is how everybody is different and everybody has excelled. And one of the skills that I think I stumbled onto was bringing back alumni of all stripes, races, and so forth. And I taught Latin, if you can believe it, in the Barrio School in Ontario.
So you know what dialogue means in Latin? Sorry.
People come back who had gone to Harvard, who'd gone to Yale, who'd gone because they were able with Latin to excel and see themselves. And the current students then saw their future. Yep. They looked like them. They had the same eyeshadow. They're the same, and it wasn't just some wild Irishman.
Totally, yeah, and that's like with my nails. That's the whole thing I've known. Like I'm always gonna have new nails every time you see me. But what we're talking, I mean, it sounds like it really, but it is a branding. It's what we're talking about. It's education in the 21st century. Like it is really a standing point, and you know that what kind of teacher I'm gonna be. Nothing that there's bad with traditional teaching at all, but that's just not me. And so, anyway, but the last question then.
Yeah, could I just add to your statement? Which is so right on point. We need to have our young people see more different types of people, experts, professionals in front of them, so they could start creating their identity, right? Because they're figuring themselves out through what they see in front of us. Our traditional education right now has one teacher in front of, or 5 teachers in front of our young people. Well, let's expose them to the world so we can see, like, I don't have to be like you, but I like your style, I like your charisma, I want to pick that up. I love the way you dress, I love your branding. Right now, branding is huge, and you spoke about it, but our young people right now are struggling with identity diffusion because they don't have these opportunities.
Yeah, and oh, sorry. Okay, so sorry, last question for you, and then I'll just say one thing on what you said to wrap it. But I think it's important as teachers, no matter what it is, like even if you are like a lifestyle teacher, you're more of a math teacher. Like I can tell one of my math teachers, I really like her. She's my favorite algebra teacher. She had these glasses that were so pointy and specific, and whether I liked her because she used math or the glasses, but I always remember, But that's who I went to, and so I think like when I said identity, which everyone here was just born that way. I'm very impressed to be in your presence. So like I think that it's just knowing that, and you as a leader or an organizational leader, allowing that maybe creativity of your workforce a little bit more, so that children feels a resonance versus just the same. So then the last question for you is going to be, how can we enhance engagement in virtual meetings?
Yes, right. Post-COVID, everybody is talking about virtual meetings. There are a lot of ways through which we can improve our engagement. As I rightly, before I said authenticity, there's one big issue that we find whenever we are in a video conference. We are too not comfortable switching on the video. That is one thing that you can be brave enough. That is something that all of us here But beyond that, the way we communicate in a virtual setting is way different than the way we communicate in a real setting. Right now we are having a panel discussion, it's an in-person one, but if the same thing had to be done, I would be speaking much more slower than what it is. The best way to learn to communicate in a virtual setting is exactly what a person who is challenged with hearing or eyesight is. So I really learn from people who are challenged because they teach us a lot. They first teach us how to observe. They teach us how to read body language. They teach us how to use verbal and nonverbal cues in understanding the message. And all that is very important in a virtual setting. Of course it is important in any setting, but virtual setting is a little more trickier because I call it two-dimensional communication. Right now you're looking at me, you're seeing me, it's called a three-dimensional communication. You're seeing the space, you're seeing myself, you're seeing the body language. But in the case of a virtual setting, it is a two-dimensional, if you turn on the video, if you switch off the video, you're gone case, because it is a one-dimensional one. People really cannot understand everything from that. And because of that, we need to bring our space with which we talk a little lower and use our body language. 33% of your body needs to be seen on the video. I have seen a lot of my classes where the body will be like a parda, you know? This is where the thing would be. This is exactly where it would be very evident. What is the point? Switch off the camera for that. 33% of your body. That needs to be on the screen if we need to turn on the video. So these are small tips, you know, nothing like in person, but we need to make a compromise.
There's definitely an importance, and we all, can be mindful when leading our classrooms, what that looks like and what we feel is best, for whatever our objective is in that class. And then the last question that I had is it possible for educators and mentors to teach creativity? If yes, how?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Yes.
Creativity is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Creativity is a learnable skill. Many people think that creativity is something that cannot be taught because it is on the other side of the brain. As educators, simple exercises. Now that is what we do at Inspire Academy. When we have the youth program, we use phrases, we give them scenarios rather than we have all these essays, write, elaborate, and these are the words that we use in schools, but instead imagine this. So we call it, we want to train them on divergent thinking. And the moment we are able to do that, they are able to naturally enhance their imagination and bring in better ideas. Words simply, in a classroom, things like show, think, instead of elaborate and write.
No, perfect.
No, I agree. I think teaching creativity is definitely possible. Listening to, I have two teenage boys, and pray for me. But I have two teenage boys, and listening to them growing up and what they want to be when they get older, it was very simple. Like, oh, I want to be a police officer. I want to be a football player. I want to be a judge. Like, it's very simple things, right? That they've been accustomed to seeing around them, right? But when you ask them, about the video games that I continuously complain about, what could you be? What could you do in this video game? And then they come up with something totally amazing. I'm like, wow, that's really creative, right? And then their brain starts working. Oh, maybe that could be a job. It definitely could be a job, right? And so now they're not thinking about, being a crossing guard or, whatever they want to be. My point is always with them, you could be anything you want. You could work at McDonald's if you want, but have the option of doing what you want to do. Have the option of being yourself. And that alone, I think, just builds community. It builds community and it builds creativity.
Yeah, I would like to add that, when you think about creativity, it doesn't stand alone. That's why communication, collaboration, critical thinking are so, it's an interrelated process. So we as educators need to create environments where we have the opportunity to put those 4 C's together so we can create. Then you have those like people that they come up with ideas real quick, but the person next to them is like, I'm gonna help you with that idea. Or I have the math, the logic to put that idea together, and it's all creation, but everybody doesn't see themselves as creators, right? But so the definition kind of, we need to rethink it to understand that it's a process that helps everyone create something new if we work collaboratively and communicate and critically think. So it's all combined.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I wouldn't want to add on
Yep.
time's up, but.
Oh, no, we got, yeah, you can do it, then we'll have one question.
Got it. So I would say facilitating the question of, I'm big on vision, right? So giving the students an opportunity, or even your colleagues or your family members, right? But obviously students right now, right? The opportunity to think about, okay, what's my vision? What do I want? Again, back to the self-image thing. What is it that I want to create for myself, right? And constantly having that in the forefront of your mind, right? And so having that conversation, allowing students to have the time and the space and to actually engage in that type of exercise, right? And bringing that up, ever so maybe every once a quarter, right? And bringing them back to that, right? So that helping them stay on track and towards success in their academics, right? So in regards to creativity, so that's my little
Yeah.
I think I would add to that, just saying the 4 C's, adding that last C of being change. Because I really think once you integrate all of those 4 C's, you have to expect change.
Yep, that's a beautiful one.
Yeah, I like that too. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
How does music and the arts fit into this whole schema?
So I love this question.
Music and art especially uses the other side of the brain. I talked to you about the 2 sides of the brain. The music and art just gives whoever is doing it a little bit of freedom. Have you seen that all of us want to think on something, all of you are problem solvers in here. We want to look towards a solution. At one point we get stuck. We feel that that's the end of our creativity. We call it the creativity cliff. And we reach there and then we don't know what to do. So when we pursue music or art or any kind of these kind of art forms, it kind of a little more liberating. It gives us a freedom. I mean, one playlist on Spotify will solve all kinds of problems. I am a big fan of Spotify there. So that is really helps. Whether you sing yourself or it really liberates your brain, and it does play a role in inducing creativity by getting you out of that creativity cliff.
I'm going to add to that because including the arts, music, and sports, it's part of, for some of us, we need to be in that energy to create, right? So it's art to create music. It's, you have these child prodigies that are brilliant, and you call them genius when they do music. The same thing with the sports. But that also helps our mind energy, right? So we remove this and put it over here and let all the organizations handle the extracurricular, but that is part of academic. That is part of teaching us how to understand who we are as individuals. How do I learn? Well, I could dance a little bit, and all of a sudden, whoop, I'm gonna sit down and write my paper. Mm-hmm. It really stimulates our brain, all of it.
I would say one thing I would want to add to that is, I've noticed, so for example, me personally, if I'm at Starbucks, I'm a lot more productive than if I were, say, at a super quiet library, right? And so I think that's interesting. I don't know, I haven't read the studies on that. Maybe you have some information on that. But even having things on the table, fidget spinners and things like that, wow. Let's say we're in a meeting with colleagues or students are getting assignments done. I know some students like to doodle while they're listening, right? So, having some background music while you're facilitating the lesson plan or workshop, right? So incorporating things like that in order to increase focus, right, and engagement.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, it's a universal language. lot of students in my school that are autistic, nonverbal. And when you put music on, the identity of those students come out in so many different ways. It's incredible. So I really do think music is collaboration. It is creativity. It is critical thinking. It is all of that intertwined.
Yeah, what I did too, you know, in my dissertation I'm doing, I can't show the model, but I have a Venn diagram and two circles of the Venn diagram. One is arts and community and science and sales. And so when you look at music, like there's never a time when I will ever be working or if I'm at a retreat that there's not 432 hertz. It's a frequency, you just go on YouTube and it's the sound of nature. And so there's frequencies that go with it and it really syncs your mind into the universe. And so I think it's all going together, right? And it also depends on, you know, what you're doing. And I think as a teacher, right, it goes back to the woman who spoke before us is, what's your intent for this class or this semester? It really comes back to that. And from that, you start to begin to design, right? What is the design now? Okay, now what's the content? Okay, now what's the experience, right? And that's when all of these things add together because there isn't a cookie cutter. And that's what we're asking for in 21st century is we're asking for options, right? We're asking for choices. We're not saying anymore, this is the only road to success, because it's not anymore. And most of the jobs that, you know, when I went to school, the jobs people have now, I'm like, that wasn't even a thing, and that was only 5 years ago. That was, you know, that was not that long ago. So it's gonna keep getting that way, and that's why it's like, whatever you're curating, allowing that student to trust themselves more than what the external world is trying to force upon them. So I think with that, we're so grateful. Thank you guys so much. You did awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.